Okay, the bell is chiming at Union Square, and we have a call. Rabbit Hole Central.
Good morning, darling. How are you?
I'm excellent.
To say hello.
Okay, you know what I played on MNN right now, I had created quite a while ago, but because I didn't have a letter of determination from the IRS, I wasn't allowed to ask for donations. So I had been asking for donations, and they were going to they threatened to take down my shows if I didn't comply.
Yeah.
So now that I got the letter, I ran up to MNN yesterday, and now I can ask for donations. So I'm really pleased. And I thought
that's a really very interesting development in terms of a policy position for the public access movement.
Well, it's because I'm a 501c3. I'm a charity.
Yeah, I know. That's you personally, but I mean in terms of across the country. If there are people that are 501c3s, that's one of the issues against a larger issue about whether somebody should be getting something for what they do, or what the limitation is. When they provide all the money for people to produce for free, then they wanted to have it be where they wouldn't be making money, which is the dialectic that operates the society, but they have 501c3. So that question of whether producers that produce on public access facilities, let's say, are able to think about getting donations, and that's a very interesting thing that's going to be taken up by ACAP. I think we're about 3 or 4 months out from when we'll be able to have it together to really get it organized, but that's an issue not only for 501c3s, or what about the idea that people who are producing then go aftermarket or something and go and try and gain from it in the society? That's an issue, isn't it?
Well, as you know, I'm very troubled by the lack of capital ownership. I don't think money is a bad thing. I think it has to be faced. Otherwise, you don't have the power. You know, people, there is an association with property, with things, and I think it's important to take care of things like our bodies. Our body, we're administrators. Who knows where the body comes from? This is such an interesting question.
Yes, that's right. We're all CEO of our body.
It definitely gets,
or should be in a right world.
It gets co-opted.
About breast cancer, apparently.
Yeah, this is a big interest of mine because money gets involved in slick advertisements, and that's what. And that show with my sister, I was talking about, the excitement that I had about, watching your own. You can be your own scientist, and your laboratory is your body. So
yeah, that's all interesting, but that's the dynamic that operates in terms of the world. And most people are most who are quote unquote practical are concerned with how are they going to pay the rent and stay housed and stay with some bread to eat and all those kind of things. And that's the way it's been. Now, if everybody were involved in the return upon capital investments or capital production instruments in a way that brought them a steady stream of income apart from what they do, right, then that would be a very different world than the one we have.
Right. Then you would see people doing, a lot of people are doing things they don't want to be doing for the sake of money, and that's tragic. Can you hold on a second?
No,
Rabbit Hole Central? Hello? It's funny, nobody else is on the line.
Harold,
okay,
that gives us an open line to the universe.
Harold, I just wanted to say...
You've maybe got something going. I was just calling to say hello, and also checking with you on the line because I know you're always there at noon about Friday. We're on for that, all right?
Definitely.
Did you get my email?
I'm really looking forward to it,
Okay,
Harold.
that's good. I want to talk with you and have you go through a lot of the things with the Howard Stern, everything, you know, and everything, because there's a lot of waters going under the bridge for you in the last month or two.
Right. Stand by for the rest of the show.
At an intense pace.
Stand by for the rest of the show. It's going to be action-packed.
Well, so I'll hang up now.
Thanks, Harold.
And
Bye.
I just wanted to check in on that, and then give my love to to Molly's dad when you get a chance. I watched the thing about 0 Point.
I know.
It's really interesting, so we'll do that.
Thanks,
and we still have to determine the time for Friday, okay?
Yes, I know. I'll be the you get your other guest, and I will work around it, okay? okay?
Yeah, that's good. It'll
Okay.
be, we're 1 to 5 rather
Okay.
than 2 to 6. So,
Great.
yeah, okay, good.
Bye.
We'll be.
Okay. Now, what I want to get on to, very important to me, is, first of all, before I go off this image, this is the Grecian goddess in Cyprus. And you can see that the breasts are bared, and what she's holding in her hands are snakes. And so that symbolizes being in command of the life energy. Maybe the Chinese would call it chi, and the Indians maybe call it prana. Sometimes it's called the Kundalini energy, and the Kundalini energy is what nourishes our body. And in deep meditation, sometimes as you're getting rid of the blocks, it can be a very dramatic experience and sometimes painful. And you would imagine if you're living in a society that has less hypocrisy, where you can share more of what is actually going on in nature, as opposed to having nature defined for you and that have that knowledge co-opted for you by some organized body of knowledge so that you can't see what's exactly in front of you. For example, that airplane that just cracked in half in the Brussels airport. We live in a society where 747 is so fragile in the Brussels airport, we accept that, and yet we accept that it can go entirely through an airplane when it comes to the World Trade Center, and not really take into account that perhaps we've been deceived. So the idea of understanding the Kundalini energy means that the more people that understand the full power that they have in their body, the healthier that society will be. Now I want to go on to play a section of something from young Dr. Freud, and this will explain why I am so grateful for Nico Haupt's work. So let's start this. And this man, Stefan Troller, George, my mother knew him, and this was done right after World War II. And so this is talking about Freud. And this also, my interest here is in the mind control and what psychoanalysis has done to prevent us. Let me see if I can. Okay, here's the section. It's very concerning to me.
Жидаку! Так не зачули Смерть!
Haben Sie je mit Ihrem Vater über
Did you ever talk to your father about this incident?
diesen Vorfall gesprochen?
Sehr viel später habe ich ihn gefragt,
Much later I
was
asked
hast du dann
him,
gemacht, Vater?
Und? Was hat er gemacht?
well, what did he do?
Komm, Sigi.
Come, Siggy. There's young Sigmund Freud. Because he's Jewish, he has to walk in the muddy road. The mean Germans are not letting him walk on the sidewalk.
Komm, Sigi. Das hat mir nie jemand angetan, ohne dass ich mich zur Wehr gesetzt hätte.
Spielt das Jüdische in Ihrem Leben noch eine große Rolle?
Does
Nicht nur für die
Jewishness
Religion,
play a large part in your life?
aber dass man als anders angesehen wird.
Anyway, I think enough of that. So, my mother actually knew the man who made that. And when my mother brought him up to her little place in Red Bluff, California, the family that she brought him to, they never knew any Jewish people at all. And she really admired this man because he was a really good poet and very literary. And yet I can see now, in starting to look at social engineering, that you can influence people's thinking about other groups of people in ways that might not be quite kosher, so to speak. So we're all concerned now about, the black makeup and the guy singing Mammy, is that being a racial slur? And, racial slurs against Jews are very important. But what about racial slurs against Germans? I mean, it can happen in all different directions. And this is something that made a big impression on me growing up in Berkeley, California. I was very, very ashamed of my German background. And I think I had run into some book, my mother eventually got rid of the book, that had pictures, drawings of the starvation that was going on in Athens. And that was also something that was sort of horrifying to me. And so when you see a lot of suffering that's going on in humanity, that suffering can be co-opted by people who will say, who is the one to blame? Now, I wanted to go through a few points because I know if we start getting calls, and I'm going to open up some more information. I had said that at Ground Zero, that video that YouTube took down, I didn't have the courage to carry the sign, investigate the death of Dan Wallace. This wasn't meaning that I didn't have the courage to hurt Sabrina, his girlfriend, or Luke, his other friend. It was that I knew I didn't have enough resources within myself to handle everything, to be both a counselor to people who are grieving over the loss of a loved one, and also to advance knowledge that's very important for the society as a whole to understand in order to move on. I wanted also to point out, it's not that I am not in any way proud of the sign. How can you really even talk about pride when it comes to something like death and like possibly murder, which is what I strongly feel is the case. I stand very strong in the conviction that you can't harp on doing a reinvestigation when you don't even understand what's most immediate and you don't have the resources to take care of what's most immediate. I had said to Les Jameson I wanted to do a presentation about nonviolent communication corporations at St. Mark's Church, even though his strategy and mine for addressing 9/11 truth were different. His strategy is to do a reinvestigation. My concern about that is that who do you know is doing the reinvestigating? Because already I was thrown out of St. Mark's just for asking one of the speakers whether he had a necktie and pointing out that last time he spoke at St. Mark's, which is a very important place to speak at, it's 9/11 truth. It's been going on almost every single week since 9/11. And that he said that the footage that was recorded of him could not be used because he wasn't wearing a necktie. So for that I was kicked out. Now I was telling Les that if I had gone in the venue of speaking about nonviolent communication corporations, I would do it in such a way that everybody could get their needs met, and that when you're collecting signatures, people will be giving you the same reaction that people were giving me when I was pointing out the death of one young man, saying that it's not proper and it's not right, that you have to use your skills of empathy to reach beyond that so you can achieve a greater good. So even though my strategy wasn't the same as Les's, insofar as I would be speaking about nonviolent communication, I would completely stick to that. Now, subsequent to that, I want to put up in its entirety the footage that we shot at St. Mark's when I was thrown out, and point out places where I think nonviolent communication needs to be used more. Because I had asked once in that group, if I am a no-planer, if I do not believe that planes flew into the World Trade Center, would I be welcomed there? Is it okay for me to be there? And it was indicated in the group that it was okay. So I'm assuming that it's okay that we can have different theories about what we believe, but we can still recognize the importance of staying together and working it out. and also keeping first and foremost on the table research. Research should never end. Research should continue all the time. And I often say what I believe today, I didn't believe 6 months ago, and 6 months from now I may believe something different. Rabbit Hole Central?
Paula,
Yes.
why do you not use NVC when it comes to talking to me?
I don't really want to talk to you right now.
You never want to talk to me.
What do you want to talk about right now? I have so many topics that I want to go over. And, you know, I wanted to go over this M&N thing, and I see that you and my sister appeared today because I had old footage. I don't want to give you a lot of time because I don't respect where you're coming from, and I don't think that we have addressed this Photoshop thing with web fairies. So if we can set up a time to do that, I'll do that, and I can progress on with what I want to do with this show today. Is that okay?
Sure. Why don't you do that with us tomorrow at 8 o'clock?
Tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the evening?
Mm-hmm.
You, me, and Web Fairy?
No, you, me, and your sister.
No, I want my sister out of this, okay? My sister does not research 9/11. Once she indicates that she's interested in doing research on 9/11, we can do that. Because most people do not want to do research, people like you take advantage of their, I won't call it really laziness, but a disinclination and an inappropriateness that they have determined in their life. It's not worth their time. It's not important for them.
Hey, Paula,
it's important for
9 weeks now, we've talked every Wednesday about 9/11. Your sister, myself, and another person. So what are you talking about?
Who's the other person?
Well, his name is JC.
Okay, let me talk to my sister about this. I'll post this and I'll get her comments on it and get back with you. But I want to take care of the Photoshop thing because Alan Steinfeld, who is a strict, mainline guy, official version, he thought it was outrageous to say that a grid would show up with Photoshop and that you're implying that the jumper pics are fake. So that's an entire topic in itself, okay?
Okay.
I'm open to that. Thanks for calling, Marcus.
Sure.
Bye. Okay. So one good thing, and I wished I could have worked with Marcus more about that, is because he has a Jewish background. And I'm saying that this area of young Dr. Freud, which again, this was a man that my mother knew. And, oh yeah, when she brought him up to Red Bluff, California, her grandmother was very upset because the young man that she brought wasn't Jewish. And my mom didn't even know that there was an issue because in the small town where she was brought up, they just didn't know. They didn't know at all. I think even Vincenzo, my husband from Sicily, he never saw anybody that was Jewish. And that shows that you can be so insulated. My mother also tells me of a time when I was quite young. I must have been under 5 years old, and we were living in the Berkeley Hills, and we were shopping, more in the flatlands. And in the supermarket, for the first time, I saw black people. And my mom said it was so embarrassing because I was a little kid, and I just kept staring. And she was uncomfortable about me staring, but the reason I was staring was because I was looking at something I'd never seen before. And so a lot of times our misunderstanding of each other has to do with this, that we simply don't know. And because of that not knowing, social engineers can jump in there and start to level blame, which they want directed away from them into these areas and take advantage of our ignorance. And that's why I'm saying research, ongoing research all the time is absolutely imperative. And don't assume that just because you're taking the contrary view to the status quo, that contrary view is correct either. So again, to talk about investigate the death of Dan Wallace, when I was saying yesterday to Alan about changing the paradigm and what that's like, it's that it can be lonely because the group that you're hanging with is it's got this consensual glue, and it holds that group together, and that's called cultism, which isn't in all cases bad because a lot of times you need to be with a group as you're working things out. Now, I want to read one of my emails here from a person who I got to know through, let's take a look at this. That is strange how your account has been hacked, manipulated at YouTube. Harold gave some good alternatives. Yes, Harold, thank you very much yesterday for saying people who want directors' accounts to have longer than 10 minutes, it seems as though YouTube is now making this available. Hurrah, YouTube. I think that's great. I did notice that when you'd reached 500 videos and then went on to about 515, and all of a sudden you only had 500 again. I thought that was strange and couldn't figure it out. Okay, that is more or less to do with me. Sometimes I pull down some and then put up some, so that's not always the case. That's because of being hacked. Okay, I thought that was strange, couldn't figure it out. I want to let you know that I've only accessed your YouTube channel. This fellow does the artwork on my YouTube channel. It's a wonderful contribution to the Concordia Foundation that I very, very much appreciate. For some reason, I would not... Oh, it goes. Regarding the young man, Dan Wallace, I'm glad you chose not to carry the sign. For some reason, I would not mention that too much. I think it's something that needs to be worked out on its own. I don't think that one is for you. I hear your points, but I think it is for someone else to work through and not you. I try to hold back on advice, but I get a strong feeling on this, and that's all I can say about it. Alan's choice on a funny video was very good. So that was talking about yesterday, Alan ending up with comedy. The reason I do this is because oftentimes I find when I say that's somebody else's job, not mine, the job doesn't get done. And I find one of the most important things that has given me health and vitality reflected in the strength and the growing attractiveness in my own body, because it even amazes me, is that I'm doing what I feel needs to be done, and if I don't do it, it won't get done. That's why I do it. So the reason I didn't hold the sign with Dan Wallace was because I could see that Sabrina was there, and I didn't have enough resources by myself to handle both her reaction and moving ahead knowledge that needs to be moved ahead. That's the reason I didn't do it. And as far as fear and things like that, this is another thing I'm concerned about. One of my fans told me that she's so confused, and I felt in that case I've utterly failed. Because I'm trying to give information out in such a way you can take it or leave it. If it's too much, I'm always advising back off, get balanced, check out your relationships with the family, with other people, to see that you're ready then to go on to the next level. Sometimes transgression is important, nonviolent communication. You need to quickly identify a problem and go into that. And in order to do that, you use a label, but you're always mindful that in the back of your mind, you want to keep the door open for connections of empathy. And that is when, the reason I pulled down one very nicely edited video that Nico did all night on our time at St. Mark's was because he called Andy a bicycle thief. Now that might be kind of handy for the sake of attracting attention, but clearly Andy was not a bicycle thief. He was abusive, he called me a retard, I got kicked out of St. Mark's Church, but it wasn't because he was a bicycle thief. So I wanted to be really clear about that, especially when we're dealing with these very delicate topics. So he goes, anyway, so that was some good advice, but I'm afraid I appreciate the advice, but I can't take that. I follow the energy, and that was the reason I didn't carry the sign. I definitely want to connect with Sabrina, and when I said that I've worked with We Are Change and people were so offended that I said that, I then put all of the videos that I've done with them in the past. And I expect my time and the time of other public access producers to be respected. It takes a lot of energy to do these shows. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. It doesn't come because the CIA is funding this. It comes because of a real heartfelt conviction and strength of focus. And when I say strength of focus, because people are saying, oh, you're crazy, you're doing this for nothing, your family's haranguing you, friends are saying, you've got to go out and get a real job and so on, and still you persist. That's why I said to Will Rodriguez, it's not respectful of us to not wear a necktie. Not that we want a necktie and a coat and all of that, but we want to be able to put up to the viewers what we laboriously do to capture that footage. That's what I meant. And he just got all furious and said, there was something wrong with me for saying that. And then I got kicked out. That's what was going on there. So now let me carry on to something I want to make sure that I have time for. Coming from a longtime viewer of mine who has really, really impressed me lately. And this man is a Jehovah's Witness. And I have deliberated long and hard sometimes with a lot of his postings, because he has in many ways the upside of following a cult. And I don't say that word in a bad way. And I know usually when people say cult or hear it, they get a negative reaction. What I mean is an intentional community that is trying to shoot higher for standards more than what they see around them. And the problem is exactly what's protecting you and inspiring you can then start to shackle you when you reach a certain level of growth. And I had deliberated long and hard with this person how to open his heart, because he'd been so traumatized by his past and by living with a family where perhaps he wasn't getting the full attention from his mother and his father precisely because they were so involved with the cult. And believe it or not, who broke that mindset was Nico Haupt. Whether Nico Haupt realizes it or not, I watched this person's reaction to Nico's work, and I watched this widening in his scope. Therefore, it's with great joy that I'm going to read to you now the comments that he made about the show that I did yesterday with Alan Steinfeld. He goes, the thing with Alan is he has been brought up in a fairly rigid paradigm. A very large part of his reality is acceptance within the status quo. He finds it very easy to accept safe knowledge and tends to reject risky knowledge, even when risky knowledge is true or part of the larger landscape of true knowledge. It is somewhat similar to Brian Williams thinking that he is a newsman rather than a propaganda shill for the status quo. When it comes to one's position within the status quo, it is almost the same as standing on the Golden Gate Bridge and considering jumping off to a certain death. You can almost think about it, but it's not worth thinking about because you're not planning on jumping today or sacrificing the gains made in life. Most of us have something like that. I suppose the Jesus story is about being willing to jump any day or any moment for the truth. Of course, it was not the Golden Gate he was jumping off of, but what he did in Jerusalem was confront the status quo. But then he was killed, leaving a story of how power and status work against truth. One of the things about Jesus that no one ever speaks of is that he was not hierarchical in nature and held no position or status, and therefore was able to be truthful at all times. He probably never actually belonged anywhere, was cheated by everyone, and was likely seen as an enemy of status quo by status people. Status and truth tend not to be able to exist in the same logical space at the same time. Or maybe these are simply incompatible concepts. Status has a tendency to override or dominate truth when a lie enforced with a threat of violence or, in the worst case, bloody terror. It is almost as true as water flowing downhill. Usually we play a strategy game of chess or poker. Most people won't bet the farm if they have a farm to bet. Alan is not a suicide player and not ready to die. I suppose don't be too hard on him. My whole family is like that. I am not sure I have ever met a person who is ready to die or be ejected from their group for the truth. It is kind of a theoretical thing. Sometimes people will sacrifice themselves while wishing to belong, and hold status, but I don't know anyone who is willing to die or sacrifice status for truth. Maybe Jesus. I am so impressed with this email. One, it shows his background as a Jehovah's Witness, that he gained the best of what you can gain by living in such an intentional community, because he uses these models of Jesus. But two, you can see that he's bursting out of it, and that he's even willing to let behind, to let go of the kind of comfort and support that group afforded, because always remember, these groups are held together by saying, if you leave, you are going to hell. If you leave, your way, is assured. You've got a place in heaven if you stay here. I went through that with the Transcendental Meditation movement. There was a time in my life where I had to make a decision, and people were just coming out of the woodwork saying that this was the wrong decision, I couldn't do it. But based on this decision, I was able to make a comment about, I think the guy's name was Bevan Morris. He was one of the leaders at that time at Maharishi International University in Fairfield, Iowa. And they were doing some kind of a drive for raising money. I think it was some kind of walkathon. And after I made this decision to leave the group, I still believed in all of the things that the group was about. Images, models of longevity in the body, the science and transcendental consciousness, being able to go beyond thinking, not waking, not sleeping, not dreaming, but a fourth major state of consciousness where your body is asleep but the mind is awake. And I was able, as a result of being able to leave behind my group but hold on to the ideals, when they called up for this walkathon, I could say, I will donate a penny for every pound that Bevan Morris loses, because Bevan Morris is shameful in his condition. I don't know if that's his name. I can't even remember. It's been so many years. This guy was massively overweight, and he was talking about being, some kind of model for immortality. It just didn't make sense. And I felt so empowered by being able to say the obvious, to point, that the emperor has no clothes. And so that's why I'm saying these things are important. And thank you so much for this. And I know Alan, I forwarded him this comment, and Alan was a little bit upset, but it was nothing like the comments that I saw posted yesterday. I think I had 45 comments. First of all, I had two people pretending to be me, one Paula Gloria with a Q, and another Paula Tsakuna that created a new account right away, because I created a new account, Paula Gloria Tsakuna, because when I was up in Byron, Greenwich, Connecticut, I had left my new password here at home, and I wanted to get into the account so that I could post my father's interview in the hospital, because somebody from We Are Change, his name is Firstborn Psycho, was doing something about my father dying. And I was going to look beyond this being in bad taste to try to find the unmet need that isn't there, that he would have to say these things about my father, and address those unmet needs. So believe me, when it comes to nonviolent communication, I certainly intend to walk my talk, unless please let me speak at St. Mark's Church about nonviolent communication and corporations. That was my discussion with Marshall Rosenberg. He brought it up from his side. All I had done was taken one workshop on nonviolent communication and read one book by Marshall Rosenberg. Nonviolent Communication was the name of the book. It wasn't until I sat down for the interview that Marshall took the discussion in that direction, and I can see he was utilizing the possibility of some type of media venue that would allow him to address corporations. And I was so happy to run with it, because I had been a charity director and I had already been filled with all this Y2K, horror and fear, and I'd been so disappointed by a lot of what I was trying to fund. And so if he wanted to work with corporations in another way, man, I was all for that. So that's why I wanted to look at this interview, because this was before 9/11. This was a long time ago, and there was a lot of innocence in that interview. I certainly didn't know about the work of David Data, where he says that you need also to go beyond just being correct to each other, that men and women are different. And that comes out in that interview too, where basically it came out because Marshall Rosenberg has worked with Palestinians and Israelis. He's worked with tribes in Rwanda, some of who have killed off, the others, a quarter of the population of the other side. He managed to sit down with chiefs from both sides. That's how powerful this knowledge of nonviolent communication is. But he said that the worst violence that he's seen and the most difficult mediation that he's ever done is between men and women in this country and between parents and children in this country. And I feel like all good saints, you realize everybody has their cross to bear. And Amachi, I took a cue from her, watching her hug people from this country. She's not saying, oh, you rich, arrogant, egocentric Americans. She can really look into the heartache, and she can see the weaknesses that we have in this country. And again, it's all based on ignorance. So ignorance is what I'm hoping to address. So I'm glad that I got that call from Truth Sleuth, or Perp Watch is his name right now. And I definitely want to address with him and Web Fairy this Photoshop incident, and I also want to bring up that sitting in Gramercy Park, for those who stayed a little later on the stream, and for that week that I took a break because my equipment is falling apart. It took 6 hours to post what I did yesterday. A combination of weak hard drives and my video camera that's capturing this is getting out of sync. So all of last week when I was in the park, I didn't capture it. But one photographer came up, and she was attracted to my sign that says about the Web Fairy, and she also photographed at the National Arts Club. And she said that at 9/11, she didn't want to take pictures. She was close and she saw it, and she could have, because she knew 2 people, and she didn't want to develop pictures later on of people that she knew jumping. And I think you can really understand the emotion of that. So I know, having heard from her, those jumper pictures are real. And if Truth Sleuth is saying that those jumper pictures are not real, then surely there are ones that are real, because there will be photographers who didn't have a personal emotional attachment and could click the shutter, and hopefully those were not confiscated so we can find them. But she also told me something very important. She because we were in Gramercy Park, it was nice and relaxed, and you didn't have people attacking each other for being Masons and what kind of sign are they doing and all that, And when a beautiful woman comes in your life, you're not thinking that Tavistock sent that beautiful woman. These thoughts, this kind of paranoia undermines your success and your balance for a successful life. This person in the relaxed environment, I can see how me too, being edgy, would have said, oh, she's a fake, she didn't take pictures when she could have. But as she explained it, I opened my heart up to her. She started opening her heart up to me, and she said, if you say we saw cartoons during 9/11, you make people feel stupid. And I thought, that's a very important thing to take into account, because in the relaxed setting of the park, when I was able to explain more of the theory, she said, yeah, that does make sense. And so I'm very happy that I now have my letter of determination from the IRS so that we can move ahead and set up sometime at the National Arts Club, where in equally a relaxed and dignified setting, we can start to go over the 9/11 TV fakery and the mashup art, for those who want to call it art, and for those who don't. I guess you would say protest and critique about the society, some type of through a command of harmony and balance. We can see beyond the power of the media that starts to social engineer the directions that we're going in, and we can find liberation. So this is Paula Gloria thanking you for tuning in to rabbitholecentral.tv, and over and out. I'll catch you later. Bye. Before I quit the stream, this little thing that you see on my nose is castor oil and green clay. And green clay is something I found out about when I was fasting. And it's something that can be very beneficial if you've got some kind of sore and you don't want the sunlight to hit it. And, it can avoid things that, dermatologists might feel you need to remove, skin cancer, stuff that could lead to skin cancer. Once I had a sore on my arm in Cyprus. I wish I could get that footage. It's many, many years. And it really looked pretty icky. And I was able to track it. I recorded it. Unfortunately, it's in a suitcase somewhere in India. Those were old PAL tapes. But it's just something I do now periodically to troubleshoot. So that's why my nose looks this way.